Okay, so the second Indian religion we need to talk about is Buddhism. So you should have just completed all of this, and now we're going to talk about Buddhism. So if you are not at this page, pause the video, get to this page, and then start the video again. So Buddhism, you might have heard of it. It's actually named after somebody called Buddha. So it's founded or started by Siddhartha Gautama. He was Indian. He's raised as a Hindu in what today is the country of Nepal, but back then it was part of the Indian Empire. And one of the things you need to keep in mind is he's born into a rich family, because we're going to hear the story about how he develops this way of life. So, story goes, when he is a young man, well, relatively young, he's 29, he goes outside of his family's palace. It's the first time he's ever been outside the palace wall, so he's experiencing life for the first time, really. He comes across an old man who is sitting by the side of the road. He's also going to see a sick man, and then a corpse, or a dead man. And then there is also a holy man, and he is, according to Siddhartha Gautama, he is a man of peace. So, this is going to inspire him to search for this peace. So he spends his whole life searching for the meaning of life. And the story goes, he spends 49 days sitting under a tree, meditating, trying to figure out what the meaning of life is, how to achieve peace. And after 49 days under this tree, he receives enlightenment. And once he receives this enlightenment, he becomes known as the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. Now, Buddhism, I'll have to tell you up front, actually there are a lot of similarities with Hinduism. The first one being, as you can see right here, they come from India. Now, what does Buddhism teach? What are the main beliefs of Buddhist people? Well, Buddha came up with these four main ideas, the Four Noble Truths. And they're basically his first sermon or speech. So, these are the things he learned while he was meditating those 49 days under the tree. The first one is, and I think everyone can agree on this, life is filled with suffering. True, according to Mr. Donovan. Number two, he says suffering is caused by desire. If you don't want anything, you can't be disappointed by not getting it. Also, I agree. And the third is that to end desire, all you have to do is if you end desire, you will end your suffering. So the way you end your suffering is by not wanting things that you don't have, which I think is a very enlightened idea indeed. And then the fourth point in the Four Noble Truths is that you can overcome desire by following the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path is the fourth noble truth. What the heck is the Eightfold Path? Let's take a look. So the first part of this is a big thing. You might not be able to do it in one lifetime. Probably will take you more than one, which means like Hinduism, there's going to be a belief in reincarnation. So, sometimes the Eightfold Path, or the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, is called the Middle Way, because it is your actual trip to enlightenment, your journey. So, like Hinduism, Buddhism believes in right speech, or treating each other well, your conduct, which in Hinduism is known as karma, your occupation, which is, like in Hinduism, your occupation depends on your caste. There's a lot of similarities to reaching enlightenment between the two religions. Basically, belief is if you can refrain or keep from wanting things you can't have, it will lead to you being a happier, more content person, and also you will likely treat other people better, and you will be able to reach your goal of nirvana, which is your release from pain and selfishness. So you no longer want things, so you aren't unhappy. Now, Buddhism is going to be spread. We learned the last class, Ashoka is going to send missionaries out throughout to spread this religion through Asia. So a missionary is somebody who spreads a religion. There he is, Ashoka. He is the guy who is credited for sending most of these missionaries out. He's going to set up monasteries, and this religion is going to spread through Southeast Asia. The country you should think of is probably China for history class. And monasteries, which we will learn a lot about in the Middle Ages, are a religious community. Usually it's a group of buildings where priests or nuns or both live, and they focus on religious teachings and living a religious life. The main difference between Buddhism and Hinduism is that Buddhists do not believe in the caste system. They think everybody should be treated equally. So, think of this question: what type of groups do you believe would be attracted to Buddhism? And we're going to watch a video.
Buddhism is one of the world's more important religions, not only in terms of the number of its adherents, but also because of its influence beyond the bounds of mere doctrine. Buddhism arose in the northeast of India in the 6th century before Christ, when Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment following a period of strict aesthetic practices which had failed to provide the spiritual satisfaction he sought. He preached his first sermon, known as the Sermon on the Movement of the Wheel of Dharma, to his first disciples near the town now called Sanath, near Benares. The teachings of the Buddha affirm that nothing is permanent or indestructible, and that living beings are governed by the cycle of birth and death, samsara, until action or karma ends. At that moment, one enters nirvana, ultimate release. The Buddha used the Four Noble Truths as a basis for explaining the unhappiness that exists in the world, and for describing the path enabling it to be overcome. In these he stated that life is suffering, and that this is caused by desire. Yet suffering may be overcome by conquering desire, and this victory is achieved by following the Eightfold Path, where vision, resolve and word should be pure, and conduct, work, effort and attention must be correct. Not long after the death of the Buddha, there was an important split amongst his followers, and this resulted in two major divisions, Theravada and Mahayana. With the passage of time, other sects and branches of the Buddhist faith appeared. The Buddhist school of Theravada, followers of the old path, as they called themselves, maintain that nirvana is attained through personal effort, and that everything an individual does, their karma, must be aimed at making them worthy of achieving final liberation. Mahayana, on the other hand, believes in the simultaneous liberation of all beings. Theravada today extends through Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. One of the more surprising characteristics of religious practice in Myanmar, formerly Burma, is the vast number of both men and women who embrace monastic life for a period of several years. Some of them, however, remain there all their life as monks or pyongis. Men enter monastic life at least twice during their lifetime. The first occasion is preceded by a specific ceremony, the Shimpyu, where the child, always younger than the age of 9, agrees to follow the strict rules of his new life as a novice. Their heads are shaved, and they receive their habits as a clear indication of their renunciation of worldly goods. Novices are subjected to harsh precepts. Amongst others, They are forbidden to eat after midday, sleep in a bed, wear jewelry, or receive money for personal use. Life in the monasteries is anything but easy, as the children must learn that the path to liberation requires sacrifices. In barely 9 days, the period of time considered most appropriate, the novices must adapt fully to monastic life, even though their stay may not be forever. One of their first tasks consists of finding food. Monks are only permitted to eat what they are given by the faithful, and they are not allowed to accept cooked dishes. The time for eating is one of the few moments of rest in their otherwise long days of work and study indoors. The monks rise early to go in search of sustenance. They stand in lines, and holding their eating bowls, set off to beg from the faithful they encounter on their way. For the local people, offering them food means an act of goodwill on their quest for salvation, as applies also to the making of donations and offerings in the temples. In Myanmar, women too have their own religious orders, although they are not subjected to such strict rules as the men. The nuns, the Lashins in Burmese, shave their heads, wear pink robes, and recite their prayers in the same way as the men. They too set off outside in search of food, although they are allowed to accept cooked food and receive money. Nevertheless, the Burmese grant less importance to the merits of the nuns, for these have only to abide by 9 commandments, and the very fact of being a woman stems from their having led a poor existence in a previous life. A specific school of Buddhism is the Lamist or Tibetan, which extends through Tibet and Central Asia. As with Mahayana, it incorporates as one of the basic aspects of its doctrine the figure of the Bodhisattva, an ideal being who, despite having earned the right to enter nirvana, chooses not to do so and stays to help others on their quest for salvation. The prayers of the Lamaists are reinforced with mantras, sacred utterances, which are repeated continuously as an aid to progress along the path to perfection. This form of Buddhism has in the Dalai Lama its head and spiritual leader. The Dalai Lama is the incarnation of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Lord of Tibet. Another specific characteristic of Lamaism is the performing of esoteric rites, which reinforce the links between the faithful and their beliefs. Nothing is left to improvisation, and all the ceremonies are repeated conscientiously, as part of the longing for salvation inherent in all religions. From the prayer wheels placed in the temples, or in the fluttering of the flags, their prayers are carried up to heaven.
So today, Hinduism is the dominant or main religion in India, but Buddhism is the most widespread religion in East and Southeast Asia.